As we progress, we're going to go into a panel. So if we could welcome on stage our three panel members, Rohit, Jereme, and Alex, as we talk about the hidden risks inside our business. So Alex, if we can just sort of kick off this panel with a bit of a discussion around the insider threats from disgruntled ex and current employees, and I'd be really interested in some of your experiences.
Sure. So I'm in quite a unique position, really. So my 23 years of business in security, I've been lucky to be in charge of an insider threat investigation for a government department, but I've also faced a insider threat incident within my own organisation and had to deal with that. Obviously, as we all know, there's different types of insider threats: malicious, non-malicious, and everybody knows about the obvious reputational damage of insider threat. What many people don't talk about is the morale damage and the other damages within the organisation, such as the ability to retain your talent, which is certainly an issue that we had, and the ability to attract talent after you've had an insider threat incident. The insider threat incident I dealt with for a government investigation turned out to be a non-technical issue and boiled down to delegated access of an email account for somebody who'd been overlooked for promotion and pushed to one side within the organisation. And unfortunately, within this organisation, they were quite left-wing and very woke, and their starting point for security was that they were all civil servants and that everybody should have access to their data. Obviously, as a security professional investigating this, I found that quite shocking. Needless to say, they also had 2 other data breaches whilst we were carrying out our investigation. So, having faced, insider threat myself, the unseen morale damage is horrendous within an organisation. Trying to deal with the insider threat incident takes away so many resources from your company, no matter how well prepared you think you might be as security professionals. Obviously, within the security industry, we rely a lot on transient staff, we rely a lot on consultants. So there's inherent risks involved in that. And unfortunately as well, we also are dealing with a lot of people who are ex-military, ex-police, some of whom have got mental health issues, which come into play. So there's a lot of risk within the industry that we just don't see and that we just don't properly understand until it happens to us, John.
Thanks, Alex. And Jereme, just picking up this flavour of ideology, and I'm wondering about what some of your thoughts are about personal ideology overlapping into professional arena, and then how do we look at the social media aspect around this insider threat?
So organisations are facing a number of key challenges when it comes to managing these threats. One is, as you said, we are becoming quite divided as a society, where we have particular values or particular views on a particular topic, and over the past 20 years, they're becoming a bit more extreme. And with the introduction of some technology where the adoption is quicker, then a company can introduce controls to deal with that particular threat that new technology introduces. It does create a situation where people might want to act on their own personal values to access information or share information. Now, what's also happening is with the abundance use of social media, it's then creating them a platform and to incentivize them to share this information so they can get instant gratification that they're doing the right thing. So it just reinforces that behaviour, even though that behaviour might be not aligned with that organisation's policy or values.
Thanks, Jeremy. And when we start looking at some of the impacts on this insider threat, Alex, how do we, or what should we take in consideration when we start looking around adequately insuring our organisations against this insider threat?
Well, again, we found ourselves actually inadequately insured when we had another incident, actually, which wasn't an insider threat incident, but it was a incident of a client not paying us. A UK-based client owed us £1 million, and we, as a company, been going for 23 years. We thought that we were fully insured, adequately insured, and it turned out that the insurance company just wasn't helpful. And it's not something that you're aware of. A lot of business owners that are sat out there today, or people that work within security companies, you pay your bills, and we've never had the need in 20 odd years to claim on off our insurance. And when we went to them for legal help, it was just horrendous. It added, we were up to £120,000 worth of legal bills, and they wanted us to use their in-house lawyer, who was just it added insult to injury, really. And again, we don't necessarily game these things out when we're doing our own internal risk audits. It's something you can sadly learn from incidents taking place within your own organisation.
So, Jereme, just to sort of follow on about this almost absence of running scenarios around risk, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think in this sort of space where people are trying to ask more questions about not just the primary consequences, but secondary consequences, it helps us understand sort of what's the overall impact of the organisation. So when there might be a particular leak of information, yes, there might be some issues regarding financial impact, but at the same time, reputation then becomes a big factor, and we're finding that organisations are becoming more sensitive to the reputational consequences of these sorts of events. So what we're seeing as well with this is that clients are undertaking that sort of scenario analysis to understand not what's that tertiary, that the primary consequence, but also that secondary consequence as well.
So Rohit, when we start looking in specialising in security risk management, we often get caught unaware. So how can we look at the monitoring within our own organisation?
Right. So, John, from my experience, I've come across several key risks. Some of them are obviously social engineering, BYOD, and deepfake. Now, I think we need a multi-pronged, multi-layered security strategy to actually address these key risks. And some of them, obviously, as we all know, is to have a robust security policy in place. There needs to be an awareness of this policy, drill down to the procedural level, which people in the organization can easily understand and implement. In terms of detection techniques, there are many detection techniques which used robust authentication tools, such as multi-factor authentication. Again, as I said earlier, it needs a multi-layered approach. So in terms of MFA, in terms of zero trust architecture, in terms of encryption, data encryption, so on and so forth, I think it needs a holistic approach to manage some of these key risks. And once we have them in place, I think it becomes very difficult for the attacker to actually materialize or make these a reality. So I would strongly propagate a multi-layered approach.
Thanks, Rohit. And Alex, can you want to expand your thoughts on this multi-layer approach?
Yeah, I think education within an organisation is really, really important. No, we all want to say that we're prepared for insider threat, but like I say, having happened to me, I think that we need to make sure that every department within the organisation is aware of what should take place during an insider threat incident. You know, you've got your legal side that want to be doing one thing, you've got your HR that we want to be doing another, you know, and you've got your public relations team who are also trying to keep the balls rolling. Everyone's got their own agenda within these when these incidents happen. I think it's just to make sure that you do really sit down and make sure that you've got a good policy, a whistleblowing policy within the organisation, which is really, really important. But also that every department is aware of these types of risks, and you've got, you know, good security champions within each department. Whatever function your organisation actually does. Okay, yes, we're all security professionals, but not everybody in this room is running a security company. So, you know, make sure that security becomes part of every single person's role, and you have good security champions who can help act as capable guardians when it comes to insider threat. Because let's be honest, these incidents only take place because there's one, opportunity, and two, the lack of a capable guardian. If we consider rational choice theory, the academic theory which studies you know, why criminals or how criminals take advantage of the lack of security, it's because there's no capable guardian, and that starts with policies, it starts with procedures, but its oversight is one of the main things within that.
So if we just follow up on this oversight and this security champions, what are some of the initial steps organisations can take along this journey?
Training and awareness. You know, as we know, within security, everyone wants to spend money. Everyone wants to get the next shiny thing. But, you know, education and awareness doesn't really cost a lot. It's the cheapest thing you can do. And, you know, your people are your best asset. You know, we heard this morning about the advent of, you know, artificial intelligence, and we saw the demonstration of that. But, you know, people are our main asset at the moment. So we need to be making sure that our intellectual property and our assets are well protected. And the only really way you're going to do that is making sure that everybody understands, you know, the implications of an insider threat incident, because they're pretty ugly. When they happen within your organisation, believe me, morale goes down the toilet very, very quickly, and your company's assets and your management time and your bandwidth is taken up solely on that incident, not on the function you really should be doing as a business.
So thanks, Alex, and Jerome, I'll throw you in a second. I just want to follow up here with Alex in terms of the reputational risk must be huge when it comes to a drop in morale, perhaps a drop in share price, and other things that accompany with it. So, Jerome, are we managing these reputational risks, and why do these risks exist to begin with?
Well, there are some organisations that are doing a lot better job in managing these sorts of risks, and it depends upon their maturity in terms of the controls and how they engage with the media and how they're able to sort of enforce and empower people to identify these sorts of risks, and also their relationship with existing governance sort of structures, like, you know, maybe your crisis teams or emergency teams. But one thing I also want to sort of touch on when it comes to managing these sorts of risks, it's important to get right the very first step in risk analysis, and that's making sure that the context is right in managing that risk. Because as an organisation evolves over time, the environment that which that organisation operates will change. Maybe there's a new IT system being put in place. Maybe there's departments that are being outsourced to a third party. Maybe there's changes within the industry that we need to sort of adapt to. So when we come to managing these risks, we need to make sure that they are not stuck in the single point of time when they were first identified, because that could potentially be a very different operating context to what it is now.
Thanks, Jereme. And Rohit, building upon what Jereme just said about the context changing, that must mean the threat landscape changes, and we need to constantly update our approach. whether it be deep fakes or other vulnerabilities. So what are your thoughts about what do we need to protect against, not just today, but in the future?
Right. I think Jereme made some very valid points. And just to add to that, no matter how good we are in implementing the control frameworks across the organization and having cybersecurity mechanisms in place, at the end of the day, we also need to do monitoring and risk mitigation. So for example, for monitoring, we can adopt controls like brand monitoring, which is pretty much monitoring not just the organization at a micro and macro level, but also monitoring the executives who work for the organization. For instance, there could be a cyber attack on the identity of an executive, and brand monitoring, from my experience, really helps in identifying what kind of an attack has taken place and to put in place measures to address it. So, and the other thing that I can think of is, as Alex previously mentioned about the need to have adequate insurance, I would definitely recommend having cyber fraud insurance in place, because for all you know, things could go wrong and you need to have a risk transfer strategy. So cyber fraud insurance is something that I would definitely recommend. And again, at a broader level, from a data perspective, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we have to really have a least privilege and need to know basis principle in the organization, because the fact of the matter is information and data is not for everyone, and it's only on a need to know, need to use basis. So as long as we can get that right, there are techniques like micro segmentation, etc., access controls to really secure that kind of data and information. If we can get that right, I think we have a large part of the security mechanism in place.
Thank you. And Jereme, do you have anything to add here to what Rohit was saying?
Yeah, I think it's important when we talk about threat profiles and risk landscapes, we need to make sure we clearly articulate what's that time horizon when we talk about that profile. Because typically when you look at a risk profile or threat profile, it's associated with an internal cycle of business activities. So your threat profile might link to your annual business plan, or maybe your 3 to 4 year business strategy. But what I'm seeing now is that there's a lot more questions regarding how far out we need to start looking at in terms of understanding our risk profile. And whether it be 5 years, 10 years, because it is a very obviously complex environment out there. We're very interconnected globally, and it's very complex. So with some of these threats that are emerging, you need more time than 12 months, 3 years to deal with a particular threat. So when you develop these threat profiles or risk profiles, you need to now start looking beyond that 5-year time horizon to understand what level of resourcing and investment is needed to adequately manage that threat. Because a classic example is AI. AI came across very quickly, the velocity of it was very quick, and a lot of organizations were not prepared to deal with the changing landscape and the actual threat AI brings to their organization. I mean, sure, AI does bring a lot of opportunities with the organization, but at the same time, I think some people were caught unawares of what sort of the negative aspects of AI can bring.
Thanks, Jereme. And Alex, just following on from Jereme in terms of looking at forecasting, what are the other hidden risks that we should be thinking about?
I think something that is not very favourable with human resources or legal departments, but that's monitoring of social email accounts of staff. We vet people very well when we take people on board. And certainly in many countries, there's regulatory requirements for them to do police checks and the like annually or biannually. But monitoring staff social media isn't favourable with human resources departments because of the sort of human rights violations that they see and the necessity that they see. But as security professionals, I think I would rather stand up in court and defend my actions of monitoring someone's social media account and seeing that they're into extremism and getting the early warning of that than an incident taking place within my company or caused by an employee. I think that's something that I think that people should consider. We're not necessarily as organisations very good at looking at things like monitoring social media of employees because of the sensitivities involved. But it's something that I would definitely recommend everybody in this room to at least have a conversation with your human resources and legal team about getting that on the table for sure.
Thank you very much. And we've run out of time, so please put your hands together and thank with me the panel.